Baghdad, Iraq. You've probably heard of it before, and likely it has been filled with a lot of good things and happy stories. However, there's a lot more to Baghdad and Iraq than just what meets the eye. But first, where is it? It is located at 33.3 degrees north and 44.4 degrees east, and is the capital of Iraq, a country bordered by Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iran, and more. Of course, these numbers don't hold much meaning. However, it can also be noticed that it is around 90 miles or 146 kilometers north of the city of Najaf, a city considered to be holy as it boasts of an important biblical figure. Still can't understand how far it is? This means it's about 7,000 miles from Portland, a flight that would take anywhere from 22 hours to more than a day. When you arrive in Baghdad, you might realize that there are quite a few people there. It's actually 7 million, the largest city in Iraq, causing quite some bustle and for it to be pretty busy. The climate in Baghdad is a little more extreme than the climate in Portland. It has a subtropical desert climate featuring extremely hot, dry summers and mild, damp winters. In the summer, the average max temperature is 112 degrees Fahrenheit with extremely little rainfall. In the winter, temperatures are usually around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. However, temperature isn't the only difference you'll find in Baghdad.
First of all, it should be noticed that the two officially recognized languages of Iraq are Kurdish and Arabic. Most people you will see will speak Arabic, as that is the most common language, with the Kurdish coming in second. When in public, most people are not loud and mainly keep to themselves.
Family arrangements are also a bit different than those in the US. Due to the extreme population loss through the Iran-Iraq War, the government has taken many steps to increase the population. Couples also live mainly in two ways, with the husband's extended family or as a nuclear family. Due to the economic state, several generations often live in the same household, with the oldest male heading the group. Taking care of the children is left up to the woman of the family, even if they live in a nuclear household and work outside of the house. Baseline is, families in Baghdad have similar structures as extended or nuclear, but are often a lot bigger and should be treated with respect. Culture-wise, people in Iraq largely value family and are often dependent on each other, whereas in the US, family is important, but independence is also valued.
Family is not the only difference that exists. There is also a difference between religion. Islam is the officially recognized religion of Iraq, a religion practiced by around 95% of the population. The Muslims are split into two groups, the majority Shias or Shittites and the minority Sunnis. These two groups have different views on religion. However, a small percent of the population in Iraq is Christian, which is split into four main churches.
When you go to Baghdad, you might realize that the economy isn't in the best state. Before the economic boom in the 1970s that hit Iraq due to oil production, agriculture used to be its main economic source, now only accounting for about 10% of its GDP. Currently, there are several sanctions on Iraq, many of which are food and trade related. Before these sanctions, Iraq would import around 70% of its food, now being forced to grow their own. Most people get their food from a food basket that is distributed every month. This is from an oil for food program, the only items that can legally be imported into Iraq. They sell crude oil, one of their main major industries, along with refined petroleum products and natural gas for imported items. For Baghdad, their main activity is petroleum refining. This photo here shows the Dora oil refinery in Baghdad. However, this leads to another issue in Baghdad: pollution. The environment is in a difficult position along with the economy, partially due to the number of wars they have had and the impact these wars have had on the infrastructure of Iraq. Before the Gulf War, Baghdad had a relatively clean amount of water and water cleanliness. This has experienced a steady decline due to many things such as aging infrastructure, leaking water and sewer networks, and low technical capacity and morale.
For example, there has been a recent article, Iraq's Toxic Conflict, by William Higginbotham. This article expands on the oil pollution and the issues with oil and ISIS. Iraq is still facing repercussions of the recently ended war. During this war, whenever ISIS, one of the main combatants during the war, was beaten and forced to retreat, they would set oil refineries and oil wells on fire, which could burn for months, releasing tons upon tons of black smoke and leaking into the surrounding environment. Since there are so many problems in Iraq, this one is not high on the list of being fixed, and the people who live close to these burning wells are facing the consequences. However, what Iraq may lack in some areas, it makes up for in personality and other interesting aspects. In many places, the landscape is absolutely beautiful, and there are quite a few places that you can visit when you go to Iraq. The Tigris River is very important to Baghdad. The river splits Baghdad in half, and many people consider it to be an essential part of the culture of Baghdad. It was part of the reason Baghdad was even built there. Many people also row in the river and find themselves connected to it. Sadly, however, it is now really polluted, and the government is not doing much about it. A man-made place that you should go visit is the Al-Shahid Monument, a monument that was originally dedicated to the Iraqi soldiers who died in the Iran-Iraq War. Nowadays, it is considered to be for all the martyrs of Iraq. This would be a great place to go to if you're into history, alongside the National Museum of Iraq. It is filled with fascinating artifacts. Some have been taken, but it is still a great place to go to in Baghdad, along with the Al-Shahid Monument. Not only does Iraq have the Tigris River, it also has the Euphrates River. They are known as the two rivers that define Mesopotamia. The whole of Iraq can be divided into four regions: the plains of the central and southeastern parts of the country, an upland region in the north between the two rivers known as the island in Arabia, deserts in the west and south, and highlands in the northeast. These natural features are also places you can go visit if you want to travel to Baghdad.
The whole of Iraq can be divided to these natural features are also places you can go visit if you travel to Baghdad. Upon arrival in Baghdad, you might realize not a lot of people go to school. Before the gruesome war that plagued Iraq for years, it had one of the world's finest education systems. It had almost achieved 100% literacy rate. Now, many schools lay in ruins and teachers are dead. From here, it only gets worse. Those who make it through primary school, mainly boys from cities, will find an equally bleak environment. The school system in Iraq will not get any better until it receives attention from the Iraqi government itself or the international community, but education is sadly not high on the list of priorities.
Iraq has had and still has a problem with refugees. Most are moving to the surrounding countries like Jordan, Syria, and Turkey. From there, some of the refugees make it to the US. Now, as you can clearly see, the refugee problem has not been solved. It has actually gotten worse. As the post-war reformations continue, and the lack of support from the international community and sanctions bear down on Iraq, Iraqi citizens are looking for prospects elsewhere, particularly in the US. But the US is becoming less and less of a safe haven, as its president, Donald Trump, instates new legislation banning refugees coming from countries like Iran, Syria, and of course, Iraq. This will put more stress on Iraq and its neighbors, as their refugee numbers are growing but have nowhere to go. This movement has become a pretty large part of Iraq's infrastructure, as in the past years, a lot of people have been immigrating out of it because of all the wars in Iraq. The government has not done much for this, as it is considered to be within the top 10 most corrupt governments in the world. The infrastructure has also been largely affected by all the wars, in a very negative way, as the Watson Institute of International Affairs writes. At the end of 2015, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees reported that over 4.4 million Iraqis were internally displaced, and an additional 264,100 were refugees abroad. Moreover, out of those who moved, most were intellectuals, lawyers, doctors, engineers, etc. This devastated the country as it was stripped of the institutions that the middle class created. Studies showed that approximately half of Iraq's registered doctors fled the country after the war. Now Iraq, which used to have some of the best healthcare systems of the region, is facing a multitude of health problems. For example, the infant mortality rate has risen 150% from 1990 to 2005, a number that just keeps growing.
Moreover, out of those who moved, most were intellectuals. Infant mortality rate has risen, number keeps growing. However, Baghdad is still enjoyable for the Iraqi people, full of recreation and fun. One specific recreation is soccer. It is more than just a sport to many Iraqi people. It is quite popular as it is considered a uniting factor after years of war and unrest. Literary and artistic pursuits flourish, especially in Baghdad. A popular venue in Baghdad is the People's Stadium, where many go and millions watch. Since then, Baghdad has won quite a few awards, and it participates in the Olympics, but not the Winter Olympics. Rowing is also a sport enjoyed by many, but doesn't have as much as an impact as soccer does.
Visiting cities like Baghdad, Iraq, is important, not because it would be the most pleasurable or happy trip, but because it is crucial so that you can understand what it is like to live outside the US bubble. If you experience what the Iraqi people are going through firsthand, you will be more empathetic and compassionate, caring about a nation and a people deserted by the world. Remember, Iraq is a beautiful place with tons of potential that was destroyed at the hands of humans, and humans, like us, are the only people that can build it back up, and we can start with visiting Baghdad.